Rob Grimes with the IFBTA, and today I'm really pleased to share a microphone with OneSource, one of our newest industry supporter members. And with us is actually somebody that I've known for a while, which I don't get to do all the time, John Young, who's the Director of IT and Security at OneSource. And you were previously a customer.
I was. Rob, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fine. So why don't we do this? Why don't we start by talking a little bit about who OneSource is and what exactly it is that you do, because I'm not going to make the assumption that everybody knows that. And so let's start there, and then we'll see where the conversation takes us.
Outstanding. So OneSource is a managed service provider. We started out in this journey over 20 years ago, providing services around what we call communication lifecycle management, everything from telecom related, expense management, circuit monitoring. And naturally, it evolved into a couple other services that I think our customers enjoy. One around IT services. So anything around server management, whether it's O365 services, and then also bleeding into what's been newest in our portfolio for the past, probably, I would say 8 to 10 years, our security offering. So where we have a full SIEM SOC offering, both East and West Coast, that helps a lot of our customers really bolster their security posture.
So as it relates to the name of the company and also what you're doing, you really want to be a single source, to a customer, really end-to-end management of their IT infrastructure, the security, their management, and now you've even thrown out there, if I just heard you correctly, the desktop. So are there some boundaries of areas that you work in or areas that you don't work in?
I wouldn't necessarily say that there are boundaries through either services that OneSource directly provides or through partnerships. We do think of us as just that one-stop go-to partner, whether it's advisory, consultative services, execution. We do a lot of large-scale, multi-location or very high-count location network deployments. Same thing with security. So we like to keep everything under one roof. That way it prevents partnerships and customers from having to go through several different providers just to get the same managed service that we can provide under one umbrella.
The one-stop shop. So before we start a whole slew of questions that your introduction has actually brought up. So you did make a transition from being a customer to actually being with OneSource. And from what I gather, you didn't necessarily know OneSource before and you hadn't worked with them before. So what's a little bit about your background? What is about the food service piece that you actually bring to OneSource?
I think it's a unique perspective about how the restaurant industry just operates, how they see value. That food and beverage and QSR industry might be a little bit different than, let's say, convenience, grocery, or other business sectors. I think I provide a very unique perspective here. Again, as you stated, I was a customer before. I brought on OneSource when I was the head of IT of a local restaurant chain here. And OneSource was one of my preferred partnerships and vendors that really allowed us to grow organically, but also just grow and mature as an IT organization. The managed services that OneSource provided really allowed me to focus on more strategically focused things, digital transformation.
Like running the restaurant and the IT that the restaurant.
Running the show and all the monitoring and eyes on glass. That capability just really propelled the internal IT team into more of a partner for the business versus just a tactical aspect.
Well, I think that, from OneSource's background, you guys work in many industries. And I know you do retail. I know you do food service. What are the other primary industries?
Oh, wow. We do a little bit in government sectors, healthcare, a lot in, again, just local retail, but there's a lot in just services, whether it's legal services, a lot of constructions. Where I think our sweet spot is, and this is really where it fits into food and beverage and hospitality well, is, again, multi-location. Could be distributed all across the U.S. That just tends to be our sweet spot. But again, we service a wide variety of business sectors and services.
So are you starting at the small to medium business level and working your way up to enterprise? I mean, or is there a sweet spot within that realm that goes from, I don't know, 10 units up to, thousands?
I think we're starting to see a little bit of shift in that, because I think historically OneSource probably grew in between that SMB, small to medium-sized business, in that, let's say, organizational one, in between, let's say, a couple hundred users. Now we're seeing a big shift where more enterprise customers, where several thousand associates, employees. Historically, in the past 3 to 5 years, we've seen that transition grow to a much larger industry. Again, being able to service multi-location across North America. We also have field services technicians that can be on site. So that's a big play for us. It really lends well to, again, multi-location, multi-unit type business models, which food and beverage is just a natural fit.
But it really is a cross section, isn't it? Because you have number of units, which you have multiple people within a unit, but then you also use the term users. And we have to recognize that security and providing these services is also on an individual basis, besides being on a store by store location basis.
That's right. That's right. Especially when we start to look at business models that have both corporate owned, franchise, and again, multiple franchise locations. There's several different hybrid models where our services really kind of hit that sweet spot.
So, you brought us down the sort of the next line here, which is there is a difference between working with franchisees, with brands. Do you see a challenge, or do you see an advantage to OneSource in providing services for the brand or the franchisor for franchisees?
That's a good question. I don't think it's a challenge. Actually, I think that's where we're uniquely suited. When it comes to delivery under corporate, I think it's a much faster deployment when we start looking at a massive network transition or upgrade. A lot of our work is really around standardization, around the architecture, so that we could deploy security services. That lends well to corporate side, but also on the franchise side, whether it's communication lifecycle management or whether it's security or network, I think we're uniquely positioned to service that just as well. I don't think there's any difference, to be honest.
It's been a pleasure to have you on board with us today. And again, John Young, the Director of IT and the Security at OneSource, who was previously a customer, and OneSource is the IFBTA's newest industry supporter member. So welcome, and thank you for having this chat with me today.
Thank you. We are very proud of our partnership with IFBTA. Again, very, very excited. And thank you for having me. It was great just to talk about just where the industry's going, how we're supporting it, and how we're positioned for it. So exciting to talk to you today.